Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our nice Tuesday. Welcome to the Explosive Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everyone.
Happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
Here we go.
Is it our nice Tuesday or everybody's nice Tuesday?
No, it's everyone's nice Tuesday.
Everyone gets a nice Tuesday. You get a Tuesday, and you get a Tuesday.
No, we have nice Tuesdays. Other people have happy Tuesdays.
You know, Mike, you're still looking for your opening monologue. Your opening.
I can't. Every time it changes. I don't know. I can't get it right.
At least you have the name of the podcast right again. You know,
finally.
Well,
there was a period of time where it went to a dark place. I kept saying Measures Explicit Podcast.
Yeah, explicit podcast measures.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I was just trying to get people's ears tuned up. Just make sure they were engaged because they hear something different.
Those are like Easter eggs that we pull out for like the 200th episode or something.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Where it's like, do you remember which episodes? Can you name it? First person, get some swag, right?
And no one's gonna listen. I'm still waiting for the day we actually get professional enough where the intro music has like a voiceover, like this is the Explicit Measures podcast.
With a gun and a whip at the end. All right. Right.
Yeah.
That wasn't the sound effects.
Obviously, data saloon, I guess.
Obviously, I'm not doing it. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll pass on that one. We might refine it a bit more. It's a good idea. We'll work on it.
With the crow screech in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Caca.
Yeah. Look up here, you too. Anyways, all right. So let's jump into some community announcements. I feel like there's a wave of things that are occurring, or things got busy. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's conferences. Maybe people are traveling a bit more. There's just a whole bunch of stuff going on. I just kind of wanted to jump in and talk on some things. First things first. We love community. Community is super fun. We want to keep letting people know about this new website that we have, jam.powerbi.tips. We're calling it our community jam. There's a lot of people creating great content or community-based things. Check it out. We have this website where you can go find. And Tommy, you were saying now we have over 8,000?
8,000 articles now.
All right. So Tommy has been collecting URLs and links and pages of the interesting Power BI content that comes across the internet. And so if you go to the bookmarks tab on the jam.powerbi.tips page, you can see all 8,000 of these bookmarks, and you can search for things. And the best part of this whole thing is it's searchable. You can type in the word calculation group, and it finds every article that mentions calculation group or DAX or sum if, or it's incredible how much power is in searching content that is all centered around Power BI. Anyways, super fun. I'm actually using it more and more when I'm looking for help and things now. I find it's very relevant. Very cool there. Some other things coming up. We have a major event coming up this week, which will be very exciting. This Thursday. Tommy, tell us about this Thursday's event.
So
this is actually your deal.
Yeah, the Chicago Power BI user group will actually be located in Chicago.
What?
I know, right?
In person? This is your first in person since everything, right? The pandemic.
Probably February of 2020. So, but we are going back downtown. You guys will be there, and also two other guests. I don't remember their name. I think it was Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari. So,
yeah, pretty much the biggest names in. Yeah, way to come back. It's gonna be all downhill from here, Tommy, because this is like the best return to in-person events you could get. The two best names in all of Power BI and analysis services area are coming to your user group. Super fun.
We're just going to keep downgrading from there. But yeah, we're meeting downtown. It's already filled up. Actually, there may be a few spots open because some people have not paid for the registration fee.
And you might get booted
from the list today, which I've been sending out emails so no one can be upset. However, if you're like, man, I wish I could go, or I'm not going to fly from New York to Chicago, which you should. We are doing it live, online, right?
And we'll also caveat this with your mileage may vary. We're going to try and do this, for the people who are in the room, you're going to get the premium experience. You're going to be there.
That's weak.
What?
Just,
don't build it up.
Mike,
I just want to caution people's expectations here. There's some events I've done online.
You're just trying to get an out.
I'm just saying, yes, I'm looking for an out.
For anybody that doesn't know, like Mike's the guy he's the wizard behind everything working, right? So like when you do live events, which we've done in the past, right? There's a lot more challenging because you're throwing a whole bunch of new hardware and different things in a different environment and getting it all set up.
Yeah.
But come on, man. You're gonna put on a show in half.
We will try. We try our darndest. We've spent money. We've bought gear. We're hopefully going to be able to prepare everything really well. So
yeah,
we've had a logistic meeting with a crappy diagram of the room.
Oh yeah, we were doodling on whiteboard. The worst program ever for whiteboarding.
It's going to be seamless.
Yeah,
it's going to be the best in-person thing you've ever seen in your life.
So it's going to be for those who are online. It's going to be 6:30 Central. The YouTube link. So make sure that's where you can find it. But yeah, so anyone can join for free online. We will have a question and answer for those who are joining as well. So there'll be a link available that you'll be able to submit your questions and then vote on the questions.
Should be fun
too. So yeah.
And the questions we're looking for are DAX related type questions.
DAX
we're focusing them because their expertise. We're not going to ask about a bunch of visuals. We're going to hone you in and get you to center around DAX and analysis services type questions, because those are the areas where Marco and Alberto are experts. And I don't know. I don't know of anyone else in the community that is probably as vocal or as deep thinkers around those things. I love their articles. They're always putting out great content. We're really excited to have them in the Chicago user group. Should be super fun. I don't know, Tommy, is there a link for that? Did you already throw that in there?
Already threw it in there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Again, I was saying there's a ton of events going on. Let's see here. Another article, and this is very timely, from SQL BI themselves. They have an article around introducing horizontal fusion. Tommy,
so if you have questions about it,
yeah, we have questions. So we have questions already ready to go. Tell me about your latest article. I don't understand it.
So yeah, this is definitely a question for Russo and Ferrari. I'll put this in the chat too, but this is a preview feature in the latest Power BI desktop update.
Yeah, you can turn it on with an option.
Right.
Yep.
And there's like no information. It just says enable horizontal fusion. Or like, that sounds fun. But really it's all about DAX and how it calculates. Basically, we all know if you do a filter in a DAX query or statement, it's going to filter each of the, like if you had, let's say USA and Italy as your countries, it's going to do one query, vertical fusion, what we're all used to. We didn't know it. It will filter, create a query for Italy, and it'll create a query for USA. Well, horizontal fusion will basically say, hey, we can just combine this and group it, which will in effect return the same result with a lot faster time. They say how much time it speeds up, not just for import, but especially the impact on direct query.
Yes.
So this is pretty significant for us. And I think as we enable it, we'll see the effects of it.
And I think this one, is this available? I think I had to read the actual article a long time ago from Microsoft. I believe this is a feature you can turn on in desktop. And today this is only available in Power BI Premium, but it sounds like eventually it'll be moving down to regular Power BI as well. Again, one of these features where I think it's kind of like you turn it on, maybe you get a little bit of performance gain from it, but there's patterns in how DAX queries are run that are very repeatable. And it sounds like there's also investigations or investment in how they can do more fusioning of DAX as in the future to continue finding common patterns and making it run more efficiently. So I think, honestly, if I step back and say, looking at this solution here or Microsoft's producing here, when you have a service like PowerBI.com where people are paying a set amount of money to do something, that it really incentivizes Microsoft to make the queries that are running on a particular report as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
Because the longer, again, you don't get more money. Microsoft doesn't get more money if you use the compute engine longer versus not. So to me, I like the idea that this is like a set amount of money that you're paying Microsoft to make these things run, because they are very much incentivized to make the back end as efficient as possible so things run fast. The incentive is there. Anyways, my thought on that one.
So great question to ask on Thursday.
That would be a great question. Yeah. Does that align with what they're thinking? Totally dig that one. There's been a couple blog updates on the Power BI blog. I want to touch on a couple here as well. There is a new feature that has just recently come out. For those, I was going to do like a show of hands, like I'm on a speaking engagement. Do you guys use the audiences the new app publishing experience. Have you guys been playing around with that a bit? And are you using that in production right now today? Yes.
Better.
No?
Yes.
I have a use case where I'm rolling it out.
Yeah. Okay, so you're getting close to getting okay.
Will be rolled out in this current. Yeah.
So one thing I didn't understand is one of my clients have accidentally adopted and just rolled into, hey, I'm going to use the, I'm going to, I clicked a little button. Oh, look at this new thing and upgrade. Boom. And then all of a sudden, look, oops. So when they initially rolled out this, the new app publishing experience, there was an option in that was previously there, but then was removed. And so the Microsoft team has now come back and said, hey, you can now save it. So imagine you have an app, a Power BI app that you've published that has maybe a report or two in it. You had the ability previously for users to show up at that app and copy the report and put it somewhere. So it was a live connected report that they could take and modify on their own. Really talking about like this, the EDW, the central data story of truth, right? We have the single app that is the truth of data, and people could then copy reports and modify them. Well, apparently that feature was missing in this new app experience when they did audiences. So this is a re-add of that feature and made actually a lot of my clients very happy, where they can come back now and actually add the ability for people to take a copy of the report. And now there's another feature too. You can also collapse the navigation panel if you want as well. It doesn't persist all the time. Anyways, very happy to see that feature that has been returned to the app experience. I think this is very good. People are already using it before. You can't come out with a new feature and remove functionality, period. So maybe it was a miss. I don't know. Maybe it was a bug. Someone didn't catch it. But I feel like I'm very happy that that's back now inside the app experience.
I feel like that was one of those things where it's like we want to get the new version of apps out.
Finally.
And then you have the tail of things that just aren't working right. And it's correct. Like, fine, just cut it off and launch it, and we'll do it in the follow-up. And then we'll say, based on your feedback.
Wait, we've all done that.
Taking away a feature that you use.
Yeah,
or we've all done that with our reports.
We're bringing it back.
Yeah,
here it is. We're so excited to bring it back to you.
We've all done the same thing in our reports or after, like, no one uses this. We can, it's fine. And all of a sudden, the inflood of comments.
Hey, where is that? Where is that? Yeah.
Well, I remember when they did V2 workspaces, there was a pop-up that would say, just so you know, if you upgrade, here's the limitation.
Just so you know.
But they did not have that. They're like, everything's going to work fine, except for some of it.
I also do like this other feature they added here.
The funny thing is
Go ahead. Funny thing is, go ahead.
I think
we were trying to be nice to each other instead of stomping on each other.
Okay, anyways, the thing I was thinking about is
you, Mike.
Yeah, I was. I do like this feature of being able to hide the app navigation pane. That is nice because you can land the report on the page you want people to see and just start there. It's a full clean page. Yeah. I think that's a great feature addition there. Why that wasn't there originally, I don't know, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. Anyway, sorry, Seth, you were saying?
Wasn't saying anything, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Let's go.
All right, let's move on. Moving on. I think that's it. I guess there's the last topic of the day. I guess as we introduce our actual topic here, we're talking about the suggestions for using the Power BI adoption roadmap. There's an image that Melissa threw out on Twitter, Melissa Coates. She is doing a speaking engagement with, I think, Matthew Roach at the Pass SQL Summit. So anyways, if you want to hear about this, this is a pre-con. This is a full day pre-conference with Melissa and Matthew Roach, which are, the creators of the adoption roadmap, the creators and developers of all this experience around what is occurring inside the adoption roadmap. Is it adoption roadmap? And the it's the adoption roadmap. There's two parts of it, right?
Adoption roadmap.
Yeah, the Power BI adoption roadmap, and I'm struggling on the other name.
Implementation planning.
The implementation plan.
The implementation planning that they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that is like content that's being generated by those users and community members and other people across the community, which is super exciting. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. This is going to be a really good diagram. I really like this article that she wrote, and I think it's really important that we talk more about adoption planning and planning of the adoption of Power BI into your organization. It does. This is one of these things that I'm having more conversation with inside the Power BI ecosystem, where we're saying, as we get better and better or as the technology keeps changing quickly, right? These little things like apps that have audiences and stuff like that. The technology is changing so fast. There is now a need to kind of continually be flexible and adjust and be able to, to look at what is occurring and how does our people and process need to adjust in order to meet these new technology changes. So I think it's very interesting. Thanks for the link, Seth. You can still go to the SQL Pass Community Summit.
Yeah.
If you want to go, hit that link. Tickets are still available, and it's next week on the 15th to the 17th. Is that right?
So it's the full week if you're wanting to attend virtually, right? They have a bunch of different ways for pricing. I pasted the one that just drops you online. In person, it's always was a fantastic event. I think it's run by Redgate now. I think they did last year all online. This year's a mix of both,
hybrid now, right?
And the speaker lineup is just amazing.
Amazing.
It definitely delves into the back end, but there's just tons of front end things as well. And if the conversation today spikes your interest, I personally would be going to the Melissa Coates strategy and Matthew Roach as well. Like you can pay for a single pre-con and just attend their all day event as well if that's something that you're interested in.
I submitted my my Ask Me Anything with explicit measures to that one, but they didn't want to have that. So apparently they don't know what's real good content out there.
Well, they were looking for the explicit podcast measures. They couldn't find it online.
They didn't understand what it was. That's what I see. I should have written it down correctly to get it in to submit it correctly. Awesome. So let's grab the. Do you have the tweet specifically?
All the sent.
Tommy, already sent already.
Way ahead of you.
And you guys are so good. I appreciate all the forethought thinking here. So that's where I kind of want to hone. I mean, I looked at this image, suggestions for using the Power BI adoption roadmap. That image that Melissa tweeted, what I thought was really good. And this is kind of what I was wanting to hang our hat on today, is thinking through a topic around this kind of area. So let's jump in. Any thoughts? Any initial thoughts on the adoption roadmap? We've had like a number of episodes around Power BI adoption roadmaps when that all came out. Tommy was so excited. Tommy was printing things out. He went all the way back to old school, was to printing stuff out, had notebooks.
Oh, yeah.
You were studying it, man.
I stapled each section, together. I mean, because here's the thing, it cannot be understated the impact of this type of documentation. And I say that because back in the day, like this was something I was developing in-house. I remember searching online for journals, scholarly papers, journals, white papers on not just Power BI adoption, like data adoption, BI adoption. Could find barely anything, or is this like this governance all legacy? And it's like, this doesn't work. Yeah. So this idea, and this is very near and dear to me, the adoption side of this, because I think we all agree, but that the skill and being able to do this and the importance of this is almost more important than your ability to actually develop a report. And and whether or not it's a hot take, but it's so true, because it's the trust, it's the culture, it's the reliance, it's the collaboration. And having this roadmap out here when this came out was such a huge part. Going, here are different things that we can do, different things we didn't think of in the past. And the problem has always been these theories, right? But not actually having a strategy. And something that you can actually really send to someone that you didn't have to write up yourself or figure out yourself. And the people writing it, a lot smarter than us. So,
and I think I like the idea of like being able to glean insight from a community of people who have been doing this a lot longer, or have had larger and bigger conversations with more established organizations. I think there's again, I can't understate the idea of like learning from people who already have done this or are putting down their thoughts against really well-developed ideas. I think it just makes total sense. Seth, you're gonna hit something?
Yeah, I agree that the wealth of information that's been provided definitely provides a lot of structure, right? But Tommy, I don't necessarily agree that the hard work doesn't need to be done still, right? Every organization, if you're going down this road, absolutely, and maybe that's where the conversation goes through, these kind of checkpoints of using the documentation in a really efficient manner, is you have to take all of the ideas in these central locations that they've compiled, which definitely gives context, and then apply it to your business, right? And that everybody has to, like, every business to be successful or successfully, build an adoption roadmap and understand where you are and set a path towards where you want to be, has to do the hard work of mapping that out. So the discussion today, I think, is going to be interesting as it relates to like just a wealth of content and information. But for people that may be only listening to us for the first time about this topic, go back and listen to like the 4 other episodes, because there's or read the documentation. You probably get more out of that. But the fact is like there's just an immense amount of information that sits underneath this high level conversation. The one I'm really keyed in on, and looking forward to, because I think Melissa in her announcement wrote a blog about what they're going to talk about in depth at the summit this year, really alludes to them kind of culminating around completing some major subject areas in the implementation planning. And that's, I think, a piece that they've framed how you do all this adoption roadmap, but people still had a lot of questions of like, okay, like I see all these pieces. How do I implement this? How do I go about and implement that? And I know that they've been working on that site for a really long time. So I'm looking forward to, seeing some, kind of new subject areas light up with links of some more details. And I just pasted that in the chat as well. But that's the newer area where they're kind of taking their adoption roadmap theories and implementation strategies, and then really getting into the replacing some of the original kind of premium implementation white papers and all that with this implementation planning guide. So
and I like this roadmap that they're suggestions for using the roadmap. There's like 12 steps to kind of, I'm starting from nothing. What are the next logical steps that I'm going to be doing to help me identify what parts of that roadmap are valuable to my company? And I think this is where I really, as you read through these steps here, the first 3 steps are all about understanding and reading what's already out there. Because I think we've done that at length. We've read the documentation. We understand the different levels. What maturity are we talking about? How are we going to build data culture? How important is executive sponsorship? All these different things. And so I think there's really, to your point, Seth, the roadmap is purely these are common patterns that may or may not work for all your organizations. But here's some very common successful things that are being accomplished from companies if you do these things that they kind of outline, right? And I like this step number 3 here, where we're actually taking a step of, okay, after you understand the roadmap, now let's look at strategic organization goals. What does adoption look like for us? And then you have to define that as a company first. So then you can really align on, is Power BI driving the right behaviors that you want? What do you guys think about that?
Just for the listeners, right? I think we should go through each step and at least outline what it is, right? So step 1 is learn. Get familiar with the roadmap end to end, right? So that means you got to digest all the information and like see all of the different objects and like areas of influence and ownership, right? That make up the adoption, right? Current state, I think, shouldn't be glossed over, because this is where a lot of time gets sunk in, because you have to take what they're saying is a good structure for how you make an adoption successful. And then you have to evaluate each of those and assess it to your current state, right? For each area, right? That's a big process, right? Of like evaluating, okay, well, you're telling me to do this. How would this apply to my company? How do I go about doing that? And then to your point, step 3 is strategy, getting clarity on the strategic org goals and adoption goals, right? So how do you align this theory and it matching up to your current state in the business, mix in now your OKRs or your OGSMs from your organization, and then or your initiative to try to build adoption within the company? And what does that look like? Because you have to have a strategy, which is where you probably have your executive sponsor. Like you have to align all the pieces before you just go, yeah, I'm going to go build this thing on paper.
I think this is also something here that comes from like a lot of the Power BI development build has always come from the business side. Like this is like the tool that has been Excel, but now has moved to Power BI. So I think a lot of users come from that business side initially. So when Power BI kind of initially hits an organization, I think you start seeing people finding value from the business side first. And I don't think the business is always thinking about a strategic plan and aligning goals all the time to like, I think in some cases you have the business needs to get stuff done. I just need to get going. So if I grab these, flat files, Excel files, and start stitching them together, oh, wow, this is powerful. Great. I can use this and move forward. And I think what we're going to see here in the near future is now with Power BI installing with all of the other Office products, you're going to have a lot more opportunity for people just to pick this tool up and just start using it. So without having like a broader plan here, I think you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
So to be honest, though, I think just to your point where you think a lot of this came from the business, I don't know about that. I think the majority of the people who came to the Power BI, there's a 50-50 mark in my head of coming from the analysis role or analyst role where you came from SQL. If you're doing Excel, you're doing heavy macros or the Excel files, but you came from a data role. And now a majority of those people have to be introduced to talking to the business, where it's like, wait, I'm not just focusing on data models and calculations and visuals. Oh, I have to actually, work with the team and the business side of things. I'm not just creating a report. That's not enough. I think that's where a lot of organizations run into the problem, where they just think I'm a reporter. I'm creating reports. So I kind of feel almost the opposite of you, where the problem is the mindset of a lot of people who are working in Power BI or are tasked with working in Power BI, call it the full time, they're not thinking this way, or this is not something they ever had to worry about or prioritize.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm going to say I would agree with that statement at this point. I think this comes more from the business than you think it does. At least how I would see it adopting. That's just my opinion.
Adoption. I think both areas had or have a challenge that you guys are talking about, and I'm still trying to correlate it to the adoption strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. Does business know that business users, did they figure out how to use Power BI? I think, yeah, like what they needed to have done is introduce them to a tool that they realized out of the gate, 5 minutes to wow, wasn't super difficult.
Yep.
Let them digest it just enough where they get hooked, and then slam them in the face with DAX, right? Like
exactly.
Then you have to figure some stuff out, but you already know the value, right?
Yes.
And I think that's absolutely one of the things that was successful with Power BI. So like from a business side, that's the ramp up in the learning curve. Tommy, to your point, I understand it 100% because you had business intelligence professionals, right? Like you had to sell them on Power BI and like, this is this new reporting thing. And like, how do you get adoption of, well, I know how to write this. I can do this, in a group by in SQL, like there's a different kind of adopting a tool that wasn't really enterprise ready, where BI developers were 100% like, that doesn't scale. Like, how do I use that? Like, there's some problems there. I think the challenges of adopting the tool are different than the strategic objectives of the organization from an adoption roadmap, to me anyway.
So this is a question. Do you think a lot of organizations are even thinking about Power BI adoption? And I think the follow-up question to that is, who should take the reins of this? Because I'm looking at the diagram, and it's that current state, strategy, future state, right? Like, to me, obviously the kickoff point here. Well, whose job is that?
Well, I mean, I think you're looking at this from like when Power BI. So I would say some companies are slower to adopt. Some companies are quicker to allow more things inside the organization or have less control around what people can or cannot use to get their jobs done, right? So what I mean by that is some companies allow people to install software on their machines. In those cases, people could have just gone out, grabbed Power BI, and just installed it. Boom, ready to go. So in some cases, I think when we talked about Power BI early on in the earlier days, I'm thinking like, year 4 and younger, right? Most of the features that you were seeing were being built were really around the user of Power BI and not necessarily the enterprise users of Power BI. So this is something Seth and I have talked about a lot, is if you look at like where Power BI is impacting organizations, I think it comes from both the enterprise side, or like the corporate IT space, or the governed area of data, and on the business user side. So this is to me, this was the aha moment for me when I was like, oh my gosh, Power BI is the tool that the business user can rapidly prototype in, build something that is adding of some value, and then I can handle the output of my results back to an IT organization, say, here you go, I've documented all my needs. Here's the Power Query, step by step, boom. And then someone can take that and optimize it on their end. And this is a story that Seth and I used a lot when we were doing consulting together, because it made so much sense. It's a easy to use tool for the business. And I think now, as we're seeing other companies, again, some companies are now slower to adopt. They're now just looking at Power BI, because this, again, we have to really be mindful here. Power BI is reporting in the cloud. Power BI is reporting on websites. So initially, most companies were like, well, we don't do that. There's a whole handful of companies that just have only on-prem reporting, because they weren't allowed, their internal policies would not allow them to move to cloud. And so I feel like a lot of times, especially when I was working with organizations, Power BI is the first thing that companies adopt from a cloud sometimes. This is their first introduction to cloud, and they love it. It works really well. It's been saving them money. And so, right? If these reports aren't saving you money or making your money, why are we doing it?
I think that's a big focus on the technology, though. And I think in my head, I'm thinking a lot more from an adoption point of view, where the technology has the ceiling from really true implementation or true adoption from the business. Where if your company doesn't have definitions, which I think goes into the roadmap, if your company doesn't have a way for change management or bad input of data, which all goes into this, because the technology will not solve that. That's going into, like, let's say, that future state of what we're trying to do. So yes, all those things from going from on-prem to the cloud, using the web for looking at your data and your reports is essential I think from more of the IT side. But when I'm thinking of the organization, and for me, it's like the whole crux of this is current state, future state, this whole diagram, because I think to me, everything starts from there. Where we would do the same thing with teams and departments, going in and going, hey, what's the current state of your reporting? What are you using? Like, well, we're using some Salesforce. We like this report, but we usually export it. And I think I've said this on the podcast before, but it's something that I think it's been my cheat code, where we'd ask an organization or a team, like, if you had $1 million and 1,000 BI, professionals working for you, what would you have? Like, what would that look like in a year? We had an unlimited budget, and trying to get people to think outside of the box of what they've seen or what's limited, what they think Power BI can do. Where it's like, you know what, we need a hierarchy of our categories, or I just need a way to, all my countries are off. It's like, okay, well, that's begins the prioritization to me.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything you're saying, right? But where I'm getting lost,
here comes the
a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
No, a little bit is you keep coming back to like Power BI as a tool, right? And I think this conversation and the adoption roadmap and everything is really taking it a step higher, right? Like what we're trying to do is like drive building a data culture and an execution framework under the umbrella of Power BI.
Correct.
1,000%.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I love that.
The solutions that we're building or like trying to implement within the organization are all around solving much bigger business problems related to efficiency, quality, consistency of data, and the output of that just happens to be like you get that in Power BI reports. But a lot of these conversations, like, you can span into other solutions or implementations. Like, that's where I think I don't like, this is a team effort and an organizational thing that you have to drive from the top down, because to your point earlier, like, business units or areas of the business are going to be focused on execution, right? You need leaders to be strategically thinking about this type of thing, because it's like the first 3 steps, right? Evaluate what my current state is. And if I'm buying into the adoption roadmap and saying, okay, like I now see that our organization, if we're gonna measure ourselves in these areas of data quality, efficiencies, like teams and organization know and understand and have a common understanding of data within the organization, how do I stack rank in that? And why would I want to go from like 0 or 1 to a 3 or 4, right? And if all of a sudden there's a lot of meaning in getting to those further downstream areas, then you can evaluate where you're at, understand like just this immense value of information that's been presented to us, right? And then determine what your future state is. Because there's a lot of organizations, I would argue the vast majority, that aren't going to go to like the highest level, right? Because the minute you go from like 4 to 5, you're investing like what 5x what you already got through like 2, 3, and 4 just to get there. And 4 is probably good enough, right? Yeah. But at least there's a path for that. Like, how do you take these big ideas, make them applicable to your business where you're gonna see value out of it at the end of the day, and then these initiatives become an OGSM. Then you break down the work into like the different silos where these teams can go do the execution. Because 100%, the vast majority of your day-to-day worker, your Power BI developer, like developers in general, like their job isn't to strategically think about like, am I doing, am I building reports in the best way that the organization is going to understand and learn them? Like, no, they're not thinking that. And they're not going to think that, right? Their job is, Tommy said, go build this report, and this is how I go do that. I need to go like interact with this business user, understand what their needs are, blah, blah, blah. But my microcosm is this like box of the project that you just gave me. And it's up to people who have experience across all these areas to be the ones that drive these larger ideas into actual actionable items, that hit workflows for people.
I was about to say, what you just said is where it becomes mission critical for step 6, 7, 8, for having the team and the organization collaborate and participate, where they have to be an active player in this. Step 6 is
let's list out the steps you're talking about.
So step 6 is prioritize, clarify what's important.
Step 4? What is step 4?
The future states.
Oh,
so okay.
Yeah. Where do you want to land, right? What's the milestone? What's quote unquote, to use Microsoft's term, what is the North Star that you're trying to shoot for?
Yeah. And step 5, because I know Seth will say something if I miss it. Maturity levels is step 5.
Assessing where you're at and figuring out, okay, how mature am I in this certain area?
And there's a big part here in the documentation too, where it's like customize it, which I think we can get to, or that could be a whole other topic. But 6, 7, and 8 are right where you're talking about here, where this is mission critical for the business, or for the business to participate. Yeah,
I like 7 of being able to say, what are the measurable KPIs and goals? Like when you look at Power BI and saying, is it successfully being adopted? Or are you building the right kind of reports? What does that look like? Just be honest with yourself. And again, a lot of this stuff, in a lot of these things, if you don't think about it, if you don't put measurements in place, how can you ever know if you're making progress to the end, towards the direction?
Yeah. And you can't alone create those goals. And step 6 is prioritize. Step 8 is action items. So those 3, each team, department, organization has to buy in or participate. And you're going to have to either compromise from the BI side but work with them. But they have to be an active participant.
I love that Seth's like shaking his head right now because he's like, Tommy's going all out of order. He's like, Seth's just driving Seth nuts.
No, it's not out of order.
I was going.
I'm just interested. Like, it's very interesting to me that you guys fly by prioritization, where I would hang my hat on there for 15 minutes, right? Like, I mean, one of the largest problems organizations have is people have too much to do, right? So you get this large funnel of work, and I think all of us struggle with putting things through the filter. And I've heard this, I think Matthew Roach has talked about it, like in the context of email, et cetera. Like everybody's got this massive funnel that they should build around the flood of work, because otherwise you're deluged constantly. You're never going to have,
you're always behind.
You're never going to understand what your priorities are. And
Sure.
the larger your ideas go in an organization, the more it's important that you put those through a funnel of analysis of prioritizing. Like in this roadmap, there's 100 different places you could start, right? Or
True.
these big areas. And in that evaluation, like you're going to have harder areas or areas that need a lot more love first before a different organization, because they may have a great, leader in the governance zone. So you don't have to worry about that. Like it's just going to go. But like prioritizing how you execute on this, to me, is like of utmost importance before you're gonna like to be successful.
I don't think I'm
anyway, that's step 6, prioritization.
I don't think I'm glossing over. Honestly, the way I'm looking at this is 6, 7, and 8 are kind of like a loop that you can get stuck in, or that are going to cycle through before you move on. I don't think, to me, they're all dependent on what,
make a goal for the priority. And then define the action items, go back, reprioritize.
I think you're doing, in a sense, they're more parallel rather than, okay, we prioritize, now let's do the goals. I think they're all, in a sense, have to happen together if you're going to do it, or if they're feasible too. So that's how, I agree.
I like that, Tony. I think it's good to figure out what your priorities are, and then immediately say, how are we going to measure them? What, like, if you have a prioritized item, hey, we want to drive more users actually looking at reports. Okay, great. If that's your desired output of whatever you're producing, what's our measurement for that? What does that look like? Or we want efficient data modeling. Well, what does that look like? How do we measure that? And what kind of information can we get out? And I think this is one of the areas where I feel you need experts in this area to some degree, because Microsoft doesn't do a great job of illuminating all these data points or key performance indicators that tell you, hey, a good best practice is to use a model and then report. Well, how do you track what that looks like? How do you measure that?
Right.
Do you count how many reports you have and how many models you have and divide them? Is that, rough average reports per model? I don't know. Like, but what you don't want to see, like, is you don't want to see like hundreds of reports with one-to-one relationships, like one model, one report. That's very inefficient. You're building a lot of extra stuff that you may not need to.
Right. And the action items and the goals are kind of going to dictate the prioritization. For example, it's like, we want real-time data. It's like, you don't have a database. So
that's true.
There's a few issues here, that we have to get to.
Yeah.
So and I think that goes to with the action items there. The prioritization is going to dictate, like, what's the low-hanging fruit here? Like, if we want to get here, then there's going to be the priorities to get there. There's going to be the sub thing. So to me, prioritization, the goals and action items are, in a sense, in a relationship together. If you think of a mind map where they are affecting each other before you move on.
Like that.
But,
oh boy. Come on.
Well, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because you whip by, you go 6, 7, and then I really want to talk about 8 action items, and then now we're talking like
all the way back to 6.
6. No, you're saying like a set of 6, 7, 8, and this is where I would say, rather than saying, hey, hold on, I want to talk about 6, I would say, no, you need to loop in 10, 11, 12, right? Like those are all together, right? But I think the nuts are 6, 7, 8. Are the crux of which, like, how you're going to go action. But 9 is tracking, right? You're tracking against your number 7 goals and understanding, like, hey, are we seeing the incremental progress that we want? 10 is adjusting, right? Because you're iterating. Like, these are huge initiatives that you want to have thin slices that you can see. Am I making an impact on the organization? The organization is investing in this. What's the value that they're seeing? 11 is celebrate and 12 is repeat. So that's why I was saying, like, you got to get to 12 to repeat the cycle, which starts at 6. So like, but I think one of the things that I'm laughing about in here is because these are really large and long initiatives, 11 is really important to do, which is celebrate, right? Like and also I think highlights the reason you would spend time with setting goals in 7 and then in 9 tracking against them after you're doing the work, because that's how you keep teams engaged in the long term, is ensuring that you're identifying and letting them know what the value is that they're creating for the larger business. Like one, the hope is that you are imparting on them the value of what they're doing, because a lot of, like, if you don't, then people get disingenuous, right? Like, it's just this is what I do every day. I don't see the value in it. But that's the fun part about like these really large initiatives, and even getting behind OGSM as an organization, this would be one of them, is if I know that my actions as a developer are opening the door for the business to understand all of these insights, and that led to XYZ sales, right? That's impactful, right? And that's celebrating these wins and tying them to things that
step
are
11.
goals that you can track, I think are really important, because you want to make sure you hit that cycle as you're iterating through these to increase adoption from you being the strategic person who's mapping it all out. But that's a really key point for teams to understand, and I think have that bit where you're celebrating those successes and getting each one of these parts out. And then probably even tracking them long term to re-celebrate them as it spreads within the organization.
I think I'm just going to skip to step 11 all the time. I'm just going to celebrate everything all the time.
Well, now you guys are jumping.
Celebrate.
I'm not jumping anything.
So,
you can't.
You skipped over 9 and 10
before the iteration loop.
Listen,
no, I'm just teasing.
I love the party as much as the next guy. All right. Being said,
go ahead, Tommy. I was going to say something else.
I think we're glossing over 7, but you can't get to celebrate if you don't know those goals and something you can track.
Glossing over 7.
We're glossing it over a lot. Okay, we got 45 minutes to try to go over all of this. So we're gonna do a whole series, guys, going through each one.
This is 12 episodes, 1 through 12.
Once a month, yeah. Jeez. No, but I think, to me, as I look at to get to celebrate, 9 and 10, track and adjust, are the pitfalls here, because I think these are the ones that people will gloss over the most or not see as important. It's like, well, we've got the strategy, we got our goals, let's do it. But you have to track them, and you have to have somewhere where you're monitoring that as well. Not just track like we have a usage report or we have, a quality report. Are you tracking that? Are you meeting on, are we getting there? And I think this is a huge part where, this is like the human nature too. It's not just in a BI world. It's when you do your budget, you're like, I think this is the whole thing where we have to be able to be proactive and conscious of that monetization of what is our goal? Are we getting there? Are we meeting with those stakeholders to get there?
But I think you can get yourself into I feel like the number 10 item, adjusting your direction or adjusting what's happening. I think this is an underrated step in this one. I don't feel like I think a lot of organizations do a lot of upfront thinking, and I think there's potential for me, or what I've observed maybe. I think there's potential here for a little paralysis by analysis, right? We look at what we want to build. We look at, we're going to measure these things, and then we put these things in place, but we really don't have it. There's really not a rigor around, hey, we're going to reevaluate this in a quarter. We kind of start this stuff, we put it in an initiative, but then having the process in place to say, okay, each quarter we're going to come back and look at these numbers, and then we'll try something new. Or if we're not getting the adoption that we think, or we spent all this time on this report and it's not being adopted, what do we do to fix that? How do we adjust that? And I feel like that's a part here that could be, re-emphasized a little bit here, is being able to, after you have the information and the data, what are you going to do to adjust that stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good point and I think we talked about this a lot when we were talking about the roadmap. There has to be a balance between trying to boil the ocean and get things off the ground and iterate to understand whether or not you're on the right path, right?
Yes.
So yes, I think it's important, and I think my point was well, I need a baseline, right? First, you have to understand how does your organization butt up against all of these initiatives to figure out and this is why I love this little diagram, figure out how you want to prioritize things. But that doesn't mean strategically map out every area of the adoption roadmap before you even get started, and then have spend 6 months driving towards this thing, and then you're going to launch it through. No, it's designed to be iterative, because I agree, Mike, there's there's a lot of failings that can happen when a bunch of people are like, okay, we'll get in a room for 6 months, and then we're
Done.
just going to present this monolithic thing to you that you
We're
have
walking
to
away.
absorb
Yes.
as another part of the organization, and the other part of the organization just goes, huh?
Oh, no way.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, hell. Like, I'm not getting in on that. Like, or now all of a sudden it's like, you want me to absorb everything that you folks have talked about for 6 months and try to like upend my life without understanding what the intent is here. Like, no, bring people along for the ride right off the gate. Do this in as iterative a fashion as you can, right?
Yes.
But I would 100% agree with it. There has to be a balance between strategic, thinking, planning, and implementation, and the implementation part, and giving yourself room to adjust within there as you're, basically trying to see whether or not your theories and thoughts about like what the organizational needs are actually being met by these initiatives, right?
Yeah, I like that.
100%.
And I threw a link in the chat window here. This is another link to a portion of the adoption roadmap around governance. And this is an image that you're speaking to, Seth, around like this kind of iterative approach. Like, do a little bit of governance. All right, let's roll out some Power BI. Do a little bit more governance. Roll out some more Power BI. I like this idea of governance inside an organization. You could take the approach of, we're just going to roll out Power BI and see what happens. And then we'll come back and address governance later. That could be an approach. Or you could do a whole bunch of governance training all up front and planning, and then roll out Power BI. And this is talking about like just purely governance of Power BI. I think you could do both of those approaches, and maybe some companies need a little bit more of the planning and more of just the rolling. It depends on your culture that's already there. But I really like option number 3 in this image, where it's a little bit of, over time, there's some time spent doing governance. There's some time spent implementing pieces or portions of Power BI and rolling out some more governance, rolling out some more Power BI, because I think it needs to be more adaptive. Because again, the tool keeps changing so quickly. Our culture in our company is also changing. So I think there's like a game, or not a game, a relationship that's being handled back and forth here just to both departments as you roll things out and as you figure out what your policy should be.
As we get near the end here, I do want to ask, is there anything you would alter, add, or remove from the suggestion roadmap? Because again, one of the parts here that Melissa talks about is the customization here too. Because again, none of this adoption stuff, which is the fun part, is like installing a program. So, and because you are dealing, like, every culture is a different organism, so to speak, and it's going to be, it's going to have its own quirks, pros and cons. So is there anything you would add, remove, or change the order?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's step 6, or is it 6? 6 and 12 need a roundabout in the image, like
your roundabout.
I'm not laughing.
Repeat. Set the priorities. Repeat. Set the priorities. Repeat.
I would just repeat 6 every time. So,
I get stuck in this loop of prioritization. I think across the board, I think solid thought thinking through. I mean, that's what you get through Melissa.
I was gonna say, how do you get Matthew and Melissa are putting this out there? Like, I don't know if you can argue with them. Like, I feel like I could only argue with this potentially if I had more experience than I do, and I don't feel like I do. So I feel like in some cases I'm like, why do I argue with the experts? That would be like me telling Marco and Alberto, hey, your DAX is wrong. Like, that's not how you do it. Like,
I hope you asked that question on Thursday.
That'd be totally inappropriate. I wouldn't do it.
I want you to find some article going, there's a better way to do that.
Yeah, exactly. No, there is no better way of doing it. Like, they have exhausted all of the experience there. And maybe I would say, maybe my observation on this one is, I think some organizations may spend a little bit longer or less in various steps on this roadmap. Like, I would say maybe like step number 10, adjusting, reevaluating, and making adjustments to your plan. Companies may not spend as much time on that, or, companies may not have as much of a celebrate step, number 11, right? Other companies will spend more time on, we really need to prioritize because there's just so much going on and we have such a limited team. And I think looking at these steps here, I wouldn't change them. I would probably just maybe emphasize for your company, figure out what works for you and where your hangups will come from, because you may need to spend a bit longer on some of these steps than others. I don't know. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah,
The,
I mean, there's
yeah.
certainly nothing glaring that I ever come out of reading their stuff where I'm like, oh man, yeah, they missed this completely. It's
Mhm.
more thought provoking,
Yes.
and love the templates and the ideas of these, you know, structural bodies within an organization. Like
Yeah.
all of it's laid out really, really well. That makes a lot of sense. I think there's going to be caveats with every implementation, but at the same time, to Mike, to your point, like stretches of the road might be longer in
Yeah.
certain cases.
Exactly.
What's going to be interesting to me is like, um, where a lot of our time has been spent talking about the adoption roadmap is how this hierarchy lays out from these being your really large strategic initiatives. If you think about it like
Mhm.
on a line, the roadmap above, how the implementation paths or roads coming off of this, right? That
Mhm.
they're now spending, like, have been spending tons of time in doing, because that's where
Yes.
it's like, okay, that's I think
The
harder for
implementation plan is what you're
people
talking to, right?
people without the experience of like being a
Yes.
Power BI developer and a leader. Like,
Yes.
don't have like the glue between how do I take these really large things and how does that actually fit into doing something from an implementation standpoint.
Yes.
That's going to be really cool to see. So I'm looking forward to the diagram she'll come up with, because she's always good at at developing, the thing that makes a lot of sense. But to me, it's like these implementation strategies hang off of, you know, um, and will branch out, and our whole initiatives, right? Like,
Mhm.
and at the end of the day, like, selling this as to an organization requires that you're able to articulate it, and all of us being visual people, the best way to do that is in visual. No
Yeah.
matter how complex the topic, or like condensing of so much information into a
Yes.
diagram is, Melissa's always had a very unique ability to do that. Like,
Yeah. Love it.
put tons down on a diagram and you just go, oh yeah, huh, that makes a ton of sense. Like, yep, that
Mhm.
encapsulates that area and blah blah blah. Whereas, a lot of mine are spaghetti messes. That's the value of, I think, or not a piece of amazing talent she has,
Yeah.
with that team and Matthew and everybody else who's helped with this documentation. That I'll be really interested in seeing, right? Because I think that's where the largest question for folks was after the adoption roadmap is like, yeah, this all makes sense, but how do we actually go about and implement these things from a technical perspective?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother body of podcasts that we can talk about as they launch those. So I'm excited to see them.
Totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. I'm loving this roadmap piece. I think this is great. The technology is super cool. It keeps adjusting. I like where it's going. The planning and the implementation phase, I think, is becoming more and more important, especially for larger and larger organizations. Because if you do some of these steps wrong, or I mean, in smaller organizations, one person's making a lot of these decisions quickly, right? In bigger organizations, you have more people to come to agreement. And in every case, when companies get larger and you need more people to agree, you're going to have difference in opinions. So I think sometimes some of these larger companies, they could have, if they don't think through this stuff, they could either mess things up royally and have a lot of, time, money to fixing things or getting things, reallocated correctly. But at the end of the day, I think if you spend some time strategically thinking about this one, people are understanding this is just more than just a tool. I think the people that are winning here are acknowledging there is a technology piece, there's a people piece, and there's a process piece. When you acknowledge these things, you become more successful in this area. Cool. Any other final thoughts, Tommy?
The only quick thing is, and I don't know if it's a step, but as I look at this, I want to emphasize to you guys and whoever's listening, the biggest thing here is the roles and responsibilities. And if I don't know if that's an added step, but as you go through
Mm,
this, someone's gonna have to lead this.
like the
Someone's gonna
racy?
have to, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
So like
roles or responsibilities. That's the
accountability, yeah.
yeah,
So,
accountability.
and
Yep.
I think that when you look at all this, like this is wonderful, but if you don't have the users, the teams, the leaders involved, who's going to move it forward, who's responsible for not setting up the calls, but who's responsible for the initiative side, and
Mhm.
if you are going to change something or prioritize something, uh again, who's overseeing it, and then who's actually doing it. So
Yeah.
I think to me, yeah.
I think that personally, I think that's wrapped up in your strategy.
I'll ponder that. So,
all right. Sounds good to me. I'll throw a little note here for the racy matrix, what that looks like there as well in the chat window. Awesome. Well, with that, thank you all very much. The chat has been very lively. Thank you again, everyone, for participating. Thank you. We appreciate you as the listeners. We hope you learned something interesting from this topic. If you haven't had the opportunity, Past Summit is still around. So go ahead and sign up. You can sign up online. You can go to in person. We'd highly recommend this session, this hour. It's a full pre-conference day session. So we'd highly recommend. The link will be either in the description of the video or earlier in the chat window. We'll try and get those together for you. Highly recommend it. It's going to be great content. I think you'll love it. So really want to push this. I think this is super good topic area. And again, gives me a lot of things to think about too, working with clients and things as well. Our only ask is if you like this content, if you like what you heard here, if you got some insights or were able to think about some more Power BI things, we're trying to have the water cooler conversation here. And we'd like more people to join and hear this great stuff as well. So please, if you don't mind, share this with someone, a coworker, take a little clip of the video somewhere and share it if you don't mind. We really appreciate that. It really helps us get the word out about the podcast. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Yeah, guys, we've gotten some great feedback this week. So you flatter us. You really do. So keep it coming. Again, that's that. If you want to thank us, if that's the best way to do it, you can find us on Google, Apple, Spotify, anywhere technology is available. We're probably there. iHeartRadio now. So
Tommy fixed that one yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's two. There's one that only has 15 episodes. We have a few more if you didn't know. So yeah, I got to find a way to delete. Anyways, anywhere it's available. We'll see you on
We're there.
Or yeah. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your time, and we will see you again on Thursday, probably twice on Thursday, maybe Thursday in the morning and then Thursday in the afternoon and the evening for the Power BI user group. So we'll catch you all later. Thank you.